Hi friends, wanted to get in here and record a quick video to share with you something that I'm finding really helpful right now in my own experience of everything that's going on in the world, and that I have found in talking to family members and friends and coaching clients that they are also finding meaningful. And this goes back to that word compassion. You know, we've talked a lot about our the necessity of our collective compassion, right? That all of this talk of social distancing and quarantining is really about not just protecting ourselves, but having compassion for those in our society who are most vulnerable, you know, to stay home so that we can keep them safe. But I think a piece sometimes when we talk about compassion that we forget about is self-compassion. And this has been stuff I've been reading about and thinking about and talking about in the places that I'm talking to folks for the last year or so. And Dr. Kristin Neff, N-E-F-F, is doing incredible work around this issue of self-compassion. You can go on, her website is selfcompassion.org and read more, but it's really pretty simple. And what she says is that there are three elements in self-compassion. You know, most of us would say that we hold high value for compassion when it comes to how we interact with other people, but sometimes we are lacking in self-compassion, compassion for ourselves. She says there's three elements to self-compassion: mindfulness versus over-identification, common humanity versus isolation, and self-kindness versus self-judgment. So let me walk us through that just a little bit. So mindfulness is that idea of noticing, being aware of, being slowing down enough to say, hey, this is what's going on for me. Just noticing without judgment, without criticism, just noticing what's happening. And that is as opposed to either over-identifying, becoming completely drowning in that experience without any sort of being able to step back from it a bit, or in suppressing that, which I'm seeing a lot of people who are like, well, I shouldn't feel this way, right? So they're suppressing that experience or that feeling that they're having. The second one is common humanity versus isolation, and I think this has never been more important to talk about, but this idea of this thing that I'm experiencing right now, this feeling, this sadness, this fear, this anger, this hurt, this worry, is somehow separating me from other people, making me different from other people. Right now, I think probably to an unprecedented extent, that we understand our common humanity, that what it is to struggle, that we all struggle, and that we all have these difficult experiences. And then finally, choosing self-kindness over self-judgment, to not diminish our experience or the feelings that we're having by saying we shouldn't, or other people have it worse, so I shouldn't have this feeling. But this idea of looking at ourselves in that moment of pain or hurt and saying, okay, what do you need? Now let me walk us through that a little bit more specifically and how this might look, especially right now. Right, so in that moment when I am feeling that sense of pain, whatever that looks like, right? That we acknowledge this is a moment of suffering. This is a moment of fear, of worry, of anxiety, of sadness. I don't know about you, but you know, sometimes if I've watched a lot of the news or I've thought about the people who are losing their jobs, you know, that overwhelming sense of just sadness, right? Or we might be feeling lonely, right? That is a real experience in the midst of this, and that hot loneliness, you know, that one of the authors I follow talks about, that sense of that disconnection. And so these are all feelings, and our feelings come from our maker, right? No feeling is wrong. And so our tendency is to immediately start in at either getting overwhelmed by that or by in many cases suppressing or pushing that down. So our first step is just to say to ourselves, this hurts, this is painful, maybe even naming what that feeling is if we have a sense of a word for it. You know, gosh, I feel really, really sad right now. I feel lonely. I feel really scared. This is fearful. Maybe it's even as simple as, I love this one, of just saying, ouch, you know, just acknowledging that. And then the next stage of that, you know, this is the practice of mindfulness, right? Noticing, being aware, being able to name it, and then to acknowledge that, you know, suffering, struggling is part of the human experience, and is even to a greater extent right now a part of our collective human experience, right? We are all feeling these feelings, feeling this pain, this heartache, this worry, this suffering. And to say other people feel this way. I am not alone. We are all struggling right now. And then finally, and this is probably the most important part, then to sit with yourself wherever you feel that, right? So maybe, I'm going to put this down for a minute. Maybe you feel it in your heart. Maybe you feel it in your throat. Sometimes fear, particularly, we feel that in our kind of here in this clenching. Maybe it's in our hands. You can see me doing that right now, or in your gut, right? That sense of, oh, I just had the air knocked out of me. So whatever that experience is, that maybe we take a second, if we can get over kind of the sense that we feel silly, and put a hand on that part of us, on our heart, or on our belly, on our gut. You know, gut is where you know, I go off on a whole thing. Those of you who've heard me talk about the word in Greek for compassion, splanchnitzomai, right? That Jesus felt that compassion. For those of you who come from the Christian tradition, you know, that sense of being moved. We're all feeling that right now. So you put your hand on wherever that is, and then you say to yourself, what do you need right now? How can I not judge these feelings, not judge this experience, but what do you need right now? You know, my faith tradition tells me that God sees me as his beloved. And so that's a word I use when I'm trying to offer myself this self-kindness, this self-compassion. And I'll say, what do you need right now, beloved? You know, and that might be as simple as, I need to sit and breathe. I need to pay attention to my breathing for a moment. I need to count my inhale at 4 and my exhale at 6, right? Slow that down. It might be that I need to go drink a glass of water. You know, I just may need to care for myself that way. I may need to turn off the news for a little while. I might want to read a book or watch a show, or I might want to call a friend. Maybe I need connection right now. Maybe I just need to sit with this feeling for a moment. Maybe I need to talk to my understanding of God. Maybe I need to read something that's inspirational. Maybe I need to figure out a way to reach out to someone else who may be experiencing that same thing. But bottom line, what I want to remind us is that this isn't about judging that feeling, or saying that this feeling isn't appropriate or right or whatever, but to just acknowledge that we're having it, to be able to sit with it, to understand we're not alone in that feeling, and then to offer ourselves kindness, just like we would offer kindness to a friend who was hurting. And yet this is so many of us struggle with this. So those are our steps again. Remember, we're going to notice this is a moment of suffering. This hurts. This is painful. We're going to acknowledge that we all struggle, that we're not alone, that all of us are having a hard time. And then we're going to ask ourselves, what do you need, beloved? How can I be kind to myself right now? All right. Hang in there, everybody. If this is helpful to you, let me know. I would love to hear. If it's helpful to you, please send it to a friend who you know is struggling. Let's be good to each other. Let's be compassionate. And let's be compassionate to ourselves. All right? God bless. Stay home. Wash your hands.